Bueno, ahí comienzo con la grabación. Ahí estamos. Bueno, fantástico. Bueno, ¿les parece que comencemos entonces ahora que ya estamos todos los que debemos estar? Raquel, ¿lista entonces? Bueno, bueno. Entonces, buenos días a todos. Vamos a comenzar entonces con la defensa de tesis de la profesora Raquel Nadalí. Se encuentran presentes gente, profesionales de la Facultad de Lenguas, la doctora Graciela Ferrero como secretaria de posgrado, Ángela Castro de Oficialia, Víctor Gómez asistiéndonos para la parte técnica, Susana Liruso como codirectora, los miembros del tribunal, la profesora tesista y también la directora de Raquel, Graciela Plachi. Bueno, vamos a comenzar entonces con la acreditación de la identidad de los miembros del tribunal y de Raquel. Les voy a pedir entonces que acerquen su DNI a medida que yo los voy nombrando a la cámara para acreditar la identidad y Ángela nos va a decir si ella ve claramente los nombres. Entonces comenzamos con Raquel Nadalí.
Sí, está muy bien, gracias.
Perfecto. María Celina Barbeito.
Muchas gracias, profe.
Patricia Lauría.
Un poquito más arriba. Ahí está, muy bien, gracias.
Y la profesora Analia Doboleta.
Ahí está, perfecto, gracias.
Bueno, perfecto. Entonces vamos a empezar. Bueno, dada la singularidad del evento, yo voy a llevar adelante todo el evento en español y tanto Raquel como los miembros del tribunal van a hablar en inglés como es habitual en las defensas de la maestría. El título de la tesis, perdón, es Factores afectivos en la enseñanza y aprendizaje de inglés en la escuela secundaria argentina. Y Raquel, entonces usted tiene alrededor de 40-45 minutos para desarrollar los principales hallazgos de su investigación. Si usted está lista, entonces comencemos. Sí, si usted tiene para compartir pantalla, adelante.
Bueno, voy a ver. Vamos a presentar primero.
Perfecto.
Bueno. ¿Se ve bien?
Okay, let's start then.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to start, first of all, expressing my acknowledgement to the people who have assisted and guided me in this process of thesis writing. And, well, special thanks to my advisor, Graciela Plachi. Thank you for your knowledge, your time, and your constant encouragement. I would also like to say thank you to the members of the evaluation committee whose comments and suggestions have added value and quality to my work. And last but not least, I would like to say thank you to Florencia Jimenez, the director of this MA program. Thank you for every email, your concern, and your good disposition. Well, the title of my thesis is Affective Factors in the Teaching and Learning of English at Argentinian Secondary Schools. And the main contents of this presentation have been organized following the structure of 6 chapters as it was presented in its written version. Introduction, literature review, and theoretical framework, methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. The main factor that triggered this study was the observation that more cognitive than affective factors have been considered in education in general and in EFL or English as a foreign language in particular. In spite of the recent interest of emotion and their influence on the learning processes, there still seems to be more tendency to, for example, measure academic success in terms of passing marks or grades. That's why the motivation of this study has been to provide a more attentive look to the difficulties expressed by teachers and students in order to handle affective factors in class. There have been noticed, for example, cases of misbehavior or, for example, what has been called burnout teachers or conflicted classroom atmospheres. So the need here is to listen and to the main protagonists or the main actors of the teaching and learning processes that are teachers and students themselves. As for the context of this research, is based on a survey conducted in 2014 that pointed or took the opinion of and was conducted in 40 public and private secondary schools in Rio Cuarto and its nearby area. The overall number of participants was 1,522 fifth-year EFL students, and there are 61 teachers. The main purpose is to analyze and compare, or was to analyze and compare teachers and students' beliefs and emotions, particularly to, or more specifically, to unveil how different perceptions of anxiety, motivation, and self-concept impact on their EFL teaching and learning experiences. In relation to the literature review or revisited in order to provide a framework for the present study, I organized it in two main groups. The first group that comprises research on students and affective factors, and another one that is related to research on interactions between students and teachers' affective factors. In relation to the first group that is has dealt with students' affective factors, scholars have come to the these main conclusions. These are not the conclusions, but these are the most relevant for the study. Within the umbrella term of affective factors, two main constructs were considered for the present study, and especially for this literature review in reference to students' affective factors. Emotions, and in this case, scholars have concluded, or studies have concluded, that they can be not only reactions, but also mediators at acquiring a foreign language. They have a significant role in students' motivation, and positive feelings among students result in more positive view about EFL learning. In the case of beliefs and students, they influence the students' learning processes significantly. They are affected, students are affected by the way, beliefs are affected by the way students learn, and they also have the characteristic of a complex, multifaceted, and sometimes contradictory nature. The other group of studies that referred to the interactions between students and teachers' affective factors can also be divided in two groups. One main group that devoted their research to different perspectives, focusing on different agents and aspects of the learning process, and another group that reached a very important conclusion to this work, that is that discrepancies between teachers and learners' perspectives have negative effects on the students, such as learner resistance, frustration, unwillingness to participate, and dissatisfaction. In relation to the theoretical framework of the present study, I will refer to the definition of the main constructs and that are targeted in this study, and also the theory of positive psychology, that is the main theoretical framework that comprises the main concepts of this study. As for affective factors, as I already mentioned, has been also considered in the present thesis as an umbrella term that embraces two main concepts, emotions and beliefs. Emotions in the present thesis are considered as an integral part of cognition, and they are socially and culturally derived. They also are a complex dynamic system and operate as amplifiers and provide energetic intensity to all human behavior. In the case of beliefs, in this present thesis, they are considered as the metacognitive knowledge that individuals hold about themselves. They cover a cognitive as well as a social dimension. They frame what and how individuals learn, and they also guide teachers and students' impressions and judgment. The question is, how do they interact with each other? Within the relationship between affective factors and within these affective factors, these two main concepts or constructs that I mentioned, emotions and beliefs, have been more recently studied in their interaction. And some important authors, such as Barcelos, has come to the conclusion that beliefs, in this respect, in their interaction, the beliefs provide the meaningful dimension to events or actions driven by emotions, and they are emotion in their core nature. Aragao also states that alteration in emotions result in different actions. Similarly, beliefs can shape understanding and influence actions. This interaction of emotions and beliefs has been considered also in relation to the three main constructs specifically studied in the present work. Motivation and self-concept, which are considered to carry more positive and neutral manifestations of affective factors, respectively, and also anxiety, which carries a more negative connotation. As for the conceptualization of these constructs, I would like to mention that in order to respond to one of the comments of a member of the evaluation committee, I have considered the more traditional definitions of the terms, but I have also added the more recent definitions. Foreign language anxiety was defined by Horwitz in 2001 as responsible for students' negative emotional reactions to language learning. But more recently, in 2014, Gregersen and McIntyre defined foreign language classroom anxiety as associated either with the learner or the teacher, or that can develop from the interaction and incompatibility between both styles, teachers and students. In the case of motivation, was defined by Gardner in 1985 as the individual's desire and satisfaction to learn a language. But more recently, Ushioda in 2011 added to this concept the idea of a dynamically changing notion that ebbs and flows throughout the learning process. In the case of self-concept, was defined in 2005 by Harris and Shank as the self-description, judgment, and evaluation of competence and the feelings of self-worth. But more recently, Marsh and Martin in 2011 stated that they are the personal perceptions of one's own academic abilities or skills that are developed through experience with and interpreting the learning environment. In relation to the main theory regarding the present, or underpinning the present work. Positive psychology is the empirical study of the well-being theory that explores how people thrive and flourish in life. This theory proposes a model for in order to apply it, and it was taken for the field of applied linguistics in 2014 for a research carried by Rebecca Oxford, who applied this model but related to research of affective factors in ESL. The main adaptation was that in the analysis, she took into consideration not only positive emotions, as it was originally stated by the theory and the model, but also negative emotions. In the present dissertation or thesis, I took this model, but I only considered 3 elements that are related, strictly related to the 3 constructs under study. P, that stands for positive and negative emotions and includes frustration and anxiety. Engagement, that covers the intrinsic motivation, and the element M, that consider manifestations of self-concept under the umbrella term of meaning. As regards the methodology, here I will describe how this model was applied in the present work, as well as other methodological procedures carried out. In reference to the design, I applied a mixed method design, since I combined quantitative strategy of gathering a large amount of data through a Likert scale survey that was then qualitatively analyzed in order to compare and contrast the results of the different groups. I also convey an exhaustive qualitative analysis of the excerpts or short text resulting from the open-ended questions of both surveys, teachers and students. Well, the research questions proposed for this study were 5, and they correspond to 5 objectives. I would like to say here that also considering a comment from one of the members of the evaluation committee, the 5th objective was reformulated. And as I said before, all of them correspond to the 5 questions. The first question asked about the beliefs of 5th year secondary school students that they hold about anxiety, motivation, and self-concept in EFL language learning. In EFL learning. The second one was in relation to teachers' beliefs in reference to their students' anxiety, motivation, and self-concept in the same context. The third one pointed to the relationship between teachers and students' beliefs in reference to the 2 previous questions. The fourth one asked about how do anxiety, motivation, and self-concept influence the EFL learning experience in students and teachers. And the last one asked or pointed to the relationship between students and teachers' perceptions of these 3 constructs. As for the data collection and analysis, research questions 1 and 2, teachers and students' answers to the Likert scale related to the specific constructs were analyzed quantitatively using the statistical program SPSS. For research question 3, the results of the first 2 questions were compared qualitatively through cross-case analysis. For the 4th question, the data gathered from open-ended questions was deductively analyzed under the light of the PERMA model, And for the last questions, comparison and evaluations of the answers were performed through content and cross-case type of analysis. The following chart shows the synoptic description of the whole design applied in this work. On top of the synopsis, we can see the 5 questions that point to the 2 groups of participants, teachers and students, and at the same time, the pink arrows of each question point to their corresponding instruments used to gather the data. After the data analysis that was performed quantitative and qualitatively, as I already explained, the results were also used in order to follow the other steps of discussion, conclusion, and implications. I will present now the results, or the main results, or a synthesis of the main results arrived at the present work, and they are organized in the order, following the order of the research questions. The first research questions were synthesized in brief comments, but because in the third question there is a more graphic demonstration or analysis, since it shows the comparisons of both results. So in the case of research questions 1 and 2, students' beliefs show that in terms of anxiety, 24% of the students believed that in the English subject causes anxiety. In reference to motivation, most of them agreed that English and English classes were beneficial for their future. 54% of the students believed in the importance of the teacher's role as motivator. 65% believed that themselves as being hard or difficult to motivate. In reference to self-concept, 47% of the students believe that they are capable to learn a language, and 42% of the students consider the subject English more difficult than other subjects. In reference to teachers' beliefs, so as to answer research question 2, and they refer to students' anxiety, and they believe that 79% of their students considered English as a source of anxiety. In reference to motivation, 60% of the teachers did not connect indiscipline to motivation in their answers, and 55% of the teachers believed that lack of motivation was a hindrance or a difficulty to teach. In reference to self-concept, 97% of the teachers have the full conviction or belief that their students are capable to learn the language. So, in order to compare both results, for research question 3, in terms of anxiety, some differences were found. More teachers than, it seems to be more teachers than students concerned, since only 24% of the students consider the subject as a source of anxiety, and on the other hand, teachers believe that 78, almost 79% of their students considered the subject as a source of anxiety. In the case of motivation, some similarities and differences were found. The similarities were in respect of the consideration of the English subject as important for their present and their future, and also that it is difficult to teach and learn when there is lack of motivation. In relation to the differences, the students agreed that the sources of motivations, the students expect teachers as motivators, whereas teachers considered other reasons for boredom or lack of interest. In relation to self-concept, differences were found. Students regarded the subject English as difficult to learn and did not conceive themselves as good language learners, whereas teachers had the full conviction that their students are perfectly capable of learning. In relation to the qualitative results, in order to listen to the student's voice in research question 4 and the open-ended section of the survey, two sources of anxiety were mentioned: the teacher's role and the subject English itself. In relation to motivation, students referred to 4 sources: the teacher's motivator, the student's own motivation, the activities in class, and teaching material. In relation to self-concept, students consider that for better language achievement, there is a need in the educational system, or the educational system should provide more teaching time and more frequency of classes. They also realized or pointed to the need of more time to speaking skills in class, and the teacher's role, and the importance of the teacher's role and the teaching methods. In relation to the results in reference to the teacher's voice, that is, they pointed to, in reference to anxiety, they pointed to the lack of discipline, the evaluation methods, the school authorities, and some socio-cultural issues such as misbehavior in class or school violence, bullying, things of those sort. In the case of motivation, teachers referred to teachers themselves as main sources, the students' awareness of the importance of the English language, and the need of more varied activities, technological resources, and updated teaching materials. In reference to self-concept, teachers took the chance in this open-ended question to make a reflection on their practice, to refer to external factors for better atmosphere in the classroom, and also they made some conscious self-criticism of their own practice. In reference to research question 5 and the comparison and analysis of both voices or insights in reference to students and what students and teachers said in relation to anxiety, the main coincidence or similarity is that both groups considered a classroom discipline as one of the main sources of classroom anxiety. The differences were in the occurrences, since it was higher within teachers than within students. In reference to the sources, students mentioned limited teaching time and difficulties with the vocabulary, whereas teachers referred to evaluation methods, school authorities, or, as I said before, sociocultural issues. In reference to motivation, the similarities were in reference that the fact that both groups considered this affective factor as a crucial component for a successful learning. They also said that it was important, the teacher's role, the need for more appealing activities, more updated material, and more technological aids. In reference to the differences, they referred to different sources. Students pointed to self-motivation, whereas teachers did not mention this aspect. Well, in relation to self-concept, also some similarities and differences were found. The similarities were in relation that both groups asked for or suggested more teaching time, higher frequency of classes, and the importance of the teacher's role. Whereas teachers asked for more qualified teachers, also teachers referred to the urge of the need of more reflective practices. In terms of differences, students mentioned more listening and speaking practice in class, and also teachers did not mention these skills in their answers. Okay, as for the discussion in relation to the results obtained, I conducted a triangulation between both research methods used, that is quantitative and qualitatively. So in terms of anxiety and from a quantitative perspective, students referred only in 24% of the cases to the fact that English causes anxiety. I would like to say that this result was not expected at the onset of the study. And I add this comment in reference to one of the suggestions of a member of the evaluation committee. I would like to highlight this fact that it was not expected, since the literature said, as in the case of Price, that in general, language learning contexts are prone to students' foreign language anxiety. In reference to the qualitative analysis, students, as I said before, referred to misbehavior, evaluation methods, institutional regulations, and socio-cultural issues, whereas teachers referred to the teacher's role and the subject itself. These results are similar to another study conducted by Ojeda in 2005 that found similar gaps between teachers and students' perceptions, also on text, anxiety, or fear of negative evaluation, and the role of the teacher also important as motivator. The difference was that in that study, teachers had a positive view of anxiety as an element or an effective factor that triggers language learning. In relation to the triangulation of the results and motivation from the quantitative perspective, as I said before, both groups considered motivation a crucial component for successful language learning. And this was also in line with a similar study conducted by Davis in 2003 in China, where both populations also said that the most important factor in second language acquisition success is motivation. End of quote. In relation to the differences from the quantitative perspective, students expected teachers as motivators, whereas teachers did not find this a reason for misbehavior, lack of motivation. In the case of the qualitative perspective, both groups highlighted the importance of the teacher's role, more varied activities, updated material, and more technology. But students referred to self-motivation as key factor, and teachers did not mention this effective factor. These results seem to contrast the ones that were mentioned in the study of Bukahari and Arhanschel, where students did not, that referred that not liking English classes, they did not like English classes, and they did not want to participate in class. But it was similar to the present study, that in the sense that is, in spite of the teacher's effort of good teaching, it was unsatisfactory the students' academic outcome. In reference to self-concept and the triangulation of data and the results, from the quantitative perspective, students said that English was difficult to learn and considered themselves as being not good language learners. On the other hand, teachers had the belief or the conviction of their students' full capacity to learn. Here I would also like to say that in order to attend, to respond to a comment of one of the members of the evaluation committee, this result was expected because it's inherent of the role of the teacher's role to consider all their students as good learners or successful learners. In the case of, or from the qualitative perspective, students referred to the increase of instruction time, more speaking practice, and more demanding teachers. And teachers referred to improvement in school timetables and more reflective practice in order to improve their experiences of EFL teaching and learning. This has some similarities and differences. These results have some similarities and differences with other studies. The similarities are in relation that in Portesio and Barcalatis study conducted in a nearby context of the city of Villa Maria, the English subject was regarded as relevant for the future for students and teachers. But the differences were in the fact that the school subject was evaluated negatively from the student's point of view. Well, as for the conclusions arrived after the analysis and of the results and discussions, I will only refer, because of time constraints, to pedagogical implications and lines for future research. In reference to pedagogical implications from the teacher's point of view, the implication point to listen to that it might be useful or important, it might be important to listen to students' voices in order to improve the learner-educator relationship. In reference to this concept, and also to respond to a comment from a member from the evaluation committee, I would like to explain that this concept refers to the idea of mutual collaboration in order to build mutual collaboration between students and teachers in order to build a more meaningful learning environment. It is also advisable, of course, to revise topics and teaching material, to provide a more reflective practice, or to engage into more reflective practice in the case of teachers, and continuing professional development. From the institutions and educational authorities' point of view, the urge or the implication would be to provide more space and importance to this continuing professional development, the revision and update of official and institutional curricula, and also the inclusion of research and theories related to beliefs and affective factors in EFL teaching and training programs. In reference to the lines for future research, the main idea would be to broaden the horizon, to broaden the spectrum of affective factors under study in order to have a more holistic view of the issue, to conduct online surveys that would be very useful to reach to other contexts, also to include the studies of different level of instruction, especially kinder or primary school students would be very, very interesting to research on that area. And of course, the long-term studies and other school subjects different from English or EFL would be also very interesting in order to deepen our knowledge in relation to affective factors and how do they influence the learning processes. I would like to finish this presentation with a quote by the well-known psychologist and educator Albert Bandura, who said that people's level of motivation, affective states, and actions are based more on what they believe than what is objectively the case. End of quote and end of presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Bueno, ahora vamos a continuar con las preguntas del tribunal. Vamos a seguir un orden estricto. Vamos a tener una oportunidad, digamos, o una instancia para cada miembro del tribunal en un cierto orden, como les envié en la comunicación, en el mail. Comenzaríamos entonces con la maestra Patricia Lauria, quien puede hacer una apreciación general del trabajo y formular preguntas en caso de ser necesario.
No la escucho a Patricia.
There. Sorry, I was saying thank you, Florencia, and I'll take up then the opportunity to comment on your work, Raquel, and on your presentation as well, which has, well, the revised version of your work plus your presentation has successfully addressed some of the issues, the comments that we made in the feedback given on your work back in, well, November and then February. I mean, November was the feedback we first gave, and you sort of acted upon and clarified in your work. That's really a good thing to comment on. Now, I wanted to focus in a question that I still have after reading your work and listening to you, and that is in relation to there are some issues in relation to teacher beliefs in your study, teacher beliefs about students' beliefs, right? Because it was that way mostly. I mean, teacher beliefs about students' motivation, about students' self-concept, and about students' well, the other issue, and anxiety, right? Thank you. And the question I still have is in relation to whether that is, I'm still concerned about, and that was a question that you successfully answered, but I'm still concerned about whether you there were not additional sources of say, whether you were not surprised as a researcher in some of the results you obtained in those particular aspects, especially in terms of teacher beliefs about student motivation and the results that seem to point to in the direction away from the teacher, meaning it seems that teachers could not see, or the results of your study point in that direction, that teachers could not see the great role that they have in increasing students' motivation. It seems that that area, well, was not revealed by the data you obtained, right? And that is surprising for me, anyway. And so I wanted to ask you to what extent, well, you didn't find it strange that teachers were looking for, were actually not seeing this issue of the great role they might have to play in students' motivation.
Okay. I listened to an echo, my voice, but anyway.
We hear you all right, so.
Okay. Because of time constraints, I didn't mention that fact that you are highlighting, but I did mention it in the written version because it also called my attention that in a way it looked in the quantitative part that is in the survey, in the Likert scale of the survey, as teachers did not pay enough attention to the to motivation. And I highlighted that in the written version. I didn't do it here in the presentation, as I said before, because of time constraints. But that's why I also focused on the qualitative part of what they expressed in the open-ended questions, the excerpts, the short text that they wrote about how to improve the atmosphere in the classroom and how to improve their practice in class. And well, there I found more reference to the sources of their roles as important in order to raise motivation in their students. But as you very well noticed, it was a fact that also called my attention, and I referred to in the written version of the thesis. I highlighted that because, especially taking into consideration the teacher's role, and as you said, that we are the ones that are supposed to carry the most important part of arising that motivation or that willingness to learn in our students. So I agree with you.
Right, yes. One more question that I'll pose, and then I'll let my colleagues make their comments and things. This is a more general type of question for you as a researcher, and what you would see as your learning outcome as a researcher after all this long and sometimes painful and sometimes lonely and anxiety-provoking and all that we all know process. So what would you say that, well, your learning outcome or outcomes are in that respect?
Sorry, I don't understand. In respect of the process of writing
with reference to conducting research. I mean, for you as a researcher, and I guess that you're. I mean, I know, I trust that you're not the same person, the same researcher after all this process, and so. If you had to, well, I'm asking you to reflect a little bit on your process of conducting research and writing the thesis.
Well, it was well, as you already mentioned, it was long. Sometimes I felt more enthusiastic. Sometimes I felt that I didn't find the right elements or enough elements. And it was an upside down feelings, but in the sense of the how do I feel as a researcher, I think it's enriching, and well, and now that not today, but I think that I would like to go on, as I mentioned, since I've worked most of my career with children in primary school, I would like to deepen there in that area. And I feel now a little bit more confident after having carried out this huge, for me, this huge enterprise.
It is. Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
good
you
luck with that. You will have to probably well, if it is children that you're going to be focusing on and their beliefs and their emotions, then you'll surely have to adapt the methodology.
Absolutely.
And think of ways of getting information in the children-friendly ways, I guess.
Yes. Huh? I'm already thinking, believe it or
not. Oh,
not.
I see. Well, yes. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both for your comments and your questions and answers as well. Okay, let's continue with Celina Barbeito. Are you there?
Yes, of course, I'm here. Okay, First of all, thank you, Raquel, for your presentation. It was very clear, and you addressed many of the comments by the evaluators and clarified a lot of things. I don't know if this is a question or a comment or something in between, but what surprised me, I mean, during the time I was reading your results and your conclusions, and today also from what you said, is the high level of clash that there is between the students and the teachers' beliefs in relation, for example, to anxiety, and this shows the nature of beliefs. They are so contradictory, so elusive, so dysfunctional sometimes, that it is surprising to see how the secondary school system, at least, I mean, these groups of students and teachers that were analyzed in the survey, which were many students, how do they, I don't know if the word is survive or really carry out this process of learning in secondary school with such a controversy between what teachers believe and what students believe. Because, for example, in relation to anxiety, students are not concerned about anxiety, and 97% of teachers, 97% of teachers consider, 78, I'm sorry, 78% of teachers consider that anxiety in students is high. So how can teachers not be seeing, or I mean, this belief that students have high levels of anxiety in secondary school, and students believing that they have no anxiety in secondary school, or in relation, for example, to self-concept, teachers are convinced that students have the capacity to learn, and students think that they are no good. So what did you, I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, these are your findings.
Well, I think that it's the time to listen to students. It's the time to try to shorten those gaps, because maybe what we are seeing or considering as low academic level of our students, secondary school students, at the end of the learning process, when they finish the secondary school, is also an answer for these questions that we are posing. Maybe it's the time that we really start considering all this issue even more seriously, in order to try to, well, to listen to them, trying the different ways to open our minds as teachers, I mean, in order to, well, to make this gap shorter or smaller, or, well, also as to work more collaboratively, as said one of the authors that I consulted for the implications, and, well, to build a new way of teaching and learning from that perspective.
All right.
I think that we are still in the generation, I hope the younger people are doing better, but we are still in the generation that we are not used to listen to our students. We have a curricula to carry out, and we have objectives to fulfill, because we have school and or government administration that are telling us what we have to do. And, well, that has been also one of the main concerns that triggered this study, that I saw that, or I observed that there is that need.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much. And finally, we move to Analia. I yield the floor to Analia Doboleta. So your questions or comments.
Thank you, Florencia. And thank you, Raquel, for your commitment and for addressing the answers to all the questions we posed, bearing in mind the breadth of your study. I would like to make two general questions. You talked about at the beginning about positive psychology.
Yeah.
Could you explain briefly how positive psychology filters down to your study in practice?
Well, it was, in fact, what I did that I explained in the presentation and also in the written version of the presentation is to take Rebecca's Oxford adaptation of the implementation of the theory on the field of affective factors and research. And I followed her steps, I would say. I took... Yes.
Yeah, you defined it as the theory of well-being.
Yes. And
that explores how people thrive and flourish. How does that translate in your study?
Well,
that is my question.
Yes, but one of the main objectives of the study was also to point to that well-being state within the classroom. That is to pay attention to these affective factors that sometimes we overlook, we teachers, I mean, especially teachers, overlook when we are teaching. If we pay more attention to these affective factors, and if we consider a little bit these results, and we look at them and we reflect on them, maybe we might help to improve that well-being inside the realms of the classroom and education in general. Why not think in terms of academic success differently? Not only in terms of passing marks or grades, but also in relation to emotional competencies. And
I see.
I know that there is a long way still to go in order to reach to that point, but well, maybe someday, and if we are courage enough to start breaking certain structures. It's not easy, as I said before, because it does not depend on us.
I see.
But well, I think that we are trying, at least I tried to put a little, a very little point there to consider.
All right. And the other question is related to Patricia's last question. Patricia asked you to reflect on yourself as a researcher. And I would like you to focus on your research piece, on the outcome now, on the final research piece. And I would like to ask you, what critical evaluation would you make of your own research piece?
Well, the weak points, you mean? I think
your reflections. How would you evaluate critically your own research piece? Not necessarily weaknesses.
Okay. Well, I think as I stated in the final remarks, maybe to take only 3 affective factors wasn't enough. This issue is, as Selena mentioned, very complex, and it asks or it urges for a more holistic view, and maybe the fact of using 2 approaches, quantitative and qualitatively, it was not still enough to take 1,522 students. It's still a small number. I don't know. We can broaden the horizons. I think that would be what I felt, that maybe we should. I still feel the need to listen to the students and to take into considerations their feelings and their voices even more seriously.
Then strengths, Raquel?
The strengths, well, as I said before, the number of the sample, that it was conducted in our context, that the literature, that was something that I didn't have time also to mention in the presentation, that the literature found in our context is still scarce. So I think that the fact that I compared both views, not only students, but also teachers, well, I think that those are nice.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
No,
Thanks.
thank you very much for your comments and your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bueno, entonces podemos culminar este momento con un aplauso que va a tener más impacto visual que auditivo. Y bueno, entonces pasaríamos al siguiente momento. Voy a detener la grabación entonces.